Hello. How bloody hell are you? Can you believe it is a new week? I feel like, I don't know, this year's just going so fast, isn't it? So fast. But we are back. Welcome to another episode of Not Just Revenue. And this week, I'm going to be talking to you about how I built my business on part-time hours. And I built it so that I could have a full-time income on part-time hours. Because not only is that just a really good phrase, full-time income on part-time hours, but it is my reality. And so I'm going to break down what that actually looked like for me and the kind of methods that I use to get there. Not necessarily what I've learned along the way, because I feel like that would be a whole other episode, but basically how I now help clients almost do this for themselves, whether they're working full-time or not. Okay, so let's get into it. I want to take you back to 2022. I had my son. I had him in July. He's a summer baby. It was an awful heat wave. I don't know if anyone remembers, but we did get up to 40 degrees. Being heavily pregnant in 40 degrees was not the most enjoyable experience of my life, but I survived. But essentially, I had him and then I was off for 9 months. Me and my partner did shared parental leave. I was employed at the time. So you get 12 months that you can take off. And then what we did with the shared is essentially he had 3 months at the beginning with me. So we both had 3 months together at the same time. And then he went back to work and then I had a remaining 6 months. But obviously not all of those 6 months were paid because it's confusing. Most people don't actually know that you can take shared parental leave like that when you're employed. Anyway, I'm on maternity leave and I end up going back to work when Jim is 9 months old. And now I have a really slow, phased in back to work plan, which is really nice because while I was off, there was a restructure in the team just as I left. And I literally, as I was going on maternity leave, had to apply for new jobs and on a whim applied for a job that I did not want, but it was a significant pay rise. And I wasn't expecting to get it. Anyway, I got it. And then I was off for 9 months. So my pay rise actually started just before I went on maternity leave. So that was great. Anyway, it meant that when I was coming back, I essentially had to learn this new job. And it was actually really nice because my team was quite relaxed. And it meant that I got this quite slow. I wasn't doing any casework. I was working in the homeless team at my local council for anyone who's interested. And I didn't get any casework straight away, which was so nice and so needed. And it meant that I kind of slowly got back into it, but I knew I didn't want to do this job beforehand. And it was very much like future me will have to deal with this. Future me was now having to deal with this, and I was not enjoying it at all. So this is the beginning, early 2023. And so we're also doing the juggle. So I was back to work 2.5 days a week. But we only had childcare for 2 days a week because that's what we could afford. And so on that other day, I was very fortunate. My partner has flexi hours. So as long as he does the hours over a week, it doesn't actually always matter what time he goes into the office. So he was having my son that half day. And then I was obviously then working from home, finishing work, taking over at kind of lunchtime. My partner would then go to work. But that then meant that he was working later a lot of the other evenings. And so that is the juggle that we did for most of that year. And I hated it. It was a horrible time. I was really struggling. I think I also had undiagnosed ADHD that I didn't realize I had. And obviously I feel like motherhood is the time where a lot of people realize they have it because everything feels so overwhelming. I also was struggling with postpartum depression. It was just, I wasn't having a great time. I'm going to keep it honest with you. I was not having a great time. Now, in that summer, I had a one-to-one call, my old coach and biz bestie, she was doing kind of these free one-to-one calls, kind of taster calls. And I was like, sign me the fuck up. I've been in the business space for a while. Now, at this point, remember, I have had a personal finance business since 2020. I was doing that kind of on the side. When I had my son, I stopped doing anything to do with it because I was so overwhelmed and struggling with postpartum depression that I kind of burned it all to the ground. At this point, I say I'm employed, I'm still trying to start posting on that account again. I'm still in the online space. I've been in the online space for almost 3 years. I'm following someone. She was a mum coach and she turned a business coach. She's offering these free sessions. And I was like, sign me up. I had this free session and I'm literally like fighting back tears the entire time because she helps me realize, what is it I want to do? Well, I want to work for myself. I want to do this, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. I'm realizing that, yeah, basically what I needed to do in order to get this back up and running. Now, it was a free session. At the time, obviously, at the end of maternity leave, I'd used all the savings I'd had for maternity leave. They were now gone. I was now back on this kind of part-time income, and I did not have the money to invest in her because my business wasn't generating any income at this point. Like the odd thing here and there, I was still getting the odd brand deal. Like affiliate links were still doing their thing, but nothing consistent and nothing, to talk home about. So I continue working and we end up actually buying towards the end of 2023, we end up buying our first home, which is the home I'm in now. I built up the savings in the first 2 years. Anyway, we're buying our first home and it's all very exciting. And we move in the October 2023. And I decided, because obviously I'd used all my savings I had used for maternity leave and also in buying the house. So I now had no savings, but I also didn't want to. I have a big thing. It's my own money mindset thing about contributing and feeling equal. And it's my own thing. But I decided that I was going to take out a loan in order to afford to do some of the things like that we needed to do for the house. But I was also going to use some of the money to hire this business coach. And that is what I did. Now, this is not me recommending that people put this sort of thing on debt. That was the decision that I made. Okay, I knew I could afford this monthly payment of the loan. It was like a really low interest loan. We needed the money to do things for the house anyway. So I was like, look, I'm just going to get this loan and I'm going to do this business coaching and I'm going to make this work. So in November, I started coaching with her. It was Leanne Stiff, anyone listening. So I started coaching with Leanne and I decided, we kind of came up that this old account I had, so I had 25,000 followers. I had an email list of 2,500 people, but I was barely making any money. I used to have a membership. I burned it down when I had my son because I just couldn't manage to do it as well. Like I said, I was still making a bit of money here and there, but most months my income was zero from it at this point. I was working 2.5 days a week and the other time I had my son. And so the juggle was real, but I started coaching. I was like, I am going to make this work. I organized our coaching calls to be, while my son napped. Did he always nap? Absolutely not. Okay. Sometimes I did that coaching call with him on my lap with the TV on, whatever I had to do, I did that coaching. And we decided that in the December, I was going to relaunch. I was going to start afresh because this massive account was holding me back, having all these followers and feeling like I had to make content for them, was really holding me back. So I was like, we kind of went, fuck it, let's start again. So in the December, literally December 1st, I relaunched a new website. So emilynutley.co.uk went live. I went to a new Instagram account. And only 10% of people followed me over. I had 25,000 followers and 2,500 followed me over. That is how I knew as well. And that was very validating. It was like, oh, this was the right move because a lot of those audience members were not what I wanted. Talking about why I made that decision and how I came to that conclusion is definitely a podcast episode for another day. But what I want to kind of get to now is that I am still working 2.5 days a week. I have my son any other time. I'm doing these coaching calls while my son is napping or just with my son in the background. As a baby, he's a 1-year-old at this point, right? I'm mostly working in the evenings. And at this point, he is taking 2 hours to fall asleep. We had a real battle with bedtimes. I would have to I had to hold him while he fell asleep. Sometimes it took 2 hours. Okay. It always took a long time. I would say it took between 1 hour and 2. It was never a quick thing. So I was juggling all of that and trying to build this business. And so I just started doing I just started speaking my truth, kind of all the things that maybe I'd been too afraid to speak about on this big account because I wanted to get more higher ticket clients. and go all in with one-to-one money coaching. And it worked. 1 month later in January, I signed my first client. I can't remember how we juggled the calls or how we made it work. Again, I think I was trying to take like coaching calls while my son was having a nap. And I ended up having a meeting with my manager at work at this point. So around this time, I had a meeting with my manager at work and I just broke down, like completely broke down. Obviously, I was juggling all of this, like building a business, working part-time in a job that I hated, and like being a mum half the time is like having to split my kind of emotional time and struggling with that. And I just completely broke down and was like, I don't want to do this. I hate doing this. Like, I can't do this. And she basically told me to hand in my notice. She was like, by the sounds of it, like, this isn't what you want to do. Hand in your notice. And obviously at this point, I had one coaching client, okay? And she was paying me £500 a month. So that was what my total income was, £500 a month. And I had expenses, I had, web hosting to pay for and all the kind of normal expenses that come with running a business. And so I was like, I can't quit my job yet. I don't have the money. And like I said, I'd used up my savings. So anyway, I kind of left that conversation and I then I think I had a coaching call with Leanne like pretty quick after, or at least I was messaging her on Voxer like, what do I do? And I'd pretty much already decided like, yes. And I think my boss knew this. Yes, I was going to hand in my notice. Now, I was very fortunate in that I worked in a local council. I had worked there for a number of years and I was in this, decent pay grade. And I had a good sick leave policy. So what I decided to do was to not only hand in my notice, but to also get signed off. Because I honestly hated the job. The anxiety, I would have palpitations opening my work laptop because the stress of having people in crisis calling me when there's nothing I can do, that is, oh my God, I cannot even, honestly, hats off to people who work in homeless teams across the country because it is horrible. It is a horrible, horrible job when there's nothing you can do. It's not for me. Not while I was also struggling with the reality of being ADHD and struggling with my depression and anxiety. So all of a sudden, I had 2 days. Now, I actually lost half a day because my partner was like, well, if you're not working, like you're not required to go into work, I'm going to have that half day back. And it was fine because then I was like, well, actually, you get to come back early most days. So it'll be fine. So I now had 2 days a week and I had to replace my income by the time my notice ran out. So in January, I had one client. In February, did I sign one more client? I think I signed 1 or 2 more clients. Anyway, one of them paid in full, which like from their savings. And that meant that I was able to be like, yeah, okay, we're good. But obviously at this point, I still didn't have that monthly recurring revenue. At the time, I also took on like 5 unpaid clients as well because I wanted to get like testimonials and stuff. So I was really building from the ground up. So I made some notes. So I'm just like going to read off my notes to make sure that I'm not going on a billion tangents. So I built the business on 2 days a week. I was working 2.5 days, juggling that half day. The business was built within the naps in the evenings, knowing that my son took up to 2 hours to fall. The trade-off was I obviously made a big jump to hand in my notice and go all in on my business when I had evidence that it had made money in the past, but not the money that I needed. Okay. And I knew that I didn't just want to make a part-time income. So I was part-time at my employed job and I think I was taking home £1,300 a month. That's what I had to replace in order to cover the bills that I needed to. That's what we kind of organised our personal finances around. But ultimately, I needed to be taking home more than that because, like I said, I had this thing about being equal and yeah. So I had to jump in order to have more time to build this business with knowing that if I can spend my time on intentional revenue generating activities, I could make this work. That was my belief. And I think the thing with most people and maybe why they don't make the jump is because they don't know what revenue generating activities are, but also not knowing exactly what they need to make. And so there's no structure. There's no kind of intentionality behind their finances. And this is something I see again and again and again. You kind of come up with this offer, you slap a price on it that you probably could charge more for, but like you don't want to because you don't want people to say no, because you just need evidence at this point, which is fair. And you throw some things out there, right? You go and market your business. Maybe it's on social media, maybe it's through networking, referrals, whatever it might be. You create this offer, slap a price on it and market it, and then hope that you make enough money. And when I say hope that you make enough money, you hope that you make money and you kind of make that money work, right? The money comes into the business and you're like, okay, let me juggle this and try and make things work. That is how I see so many business owners managing their finances, even like business owners that have been in business for decades, okay? It's very reactive. And pardon me, this is where money and revenue in your business can feel so inconsistent, because it's a bit like a push-pull, right? There will be times in your business where you won't have clients, and so you've got no money, so you need to do loads of marketing, and then you get more clients, and then you get the clients, you stop marketing. And that means that then you stop, the money eventually stops when that client dries up or like another client ends or whatever it might be. And so then you go into another phase of like stressful marketing in order to make more money. And so it's very reactive. Okay. We're kind of seeing, okay, I need this, like I need to make money, but never actually doing the maths around that, or doing very loose maths because, we all hate maths and same. But yeah, trying to make the money and then trying to make the money work. Whereas I was coming at business from, and I've always struggled with this, right? Because I came at business from a place of, I'd already been in the financial space for over 3 years, almost 4 years at this point, and the online space. So I knew the online space. I knew what worked there. I knew the personal finance space. And so I knew a lot of financial strategies that I was able to apply. I have never struggled with my business finances because I came at business with this financial understanding. And so yeah, tell me your struggles. Anyway, I had to make this trade-off. But because I could be really, really strategic with my revenue generating activities, because I knew exactly how much I needed to take home. And so then I knew exactly how much I needed to sell. And so I knew exactly how having that number and having the data allowed me to go, well, if I have this many people in my audience and I know that they're really warm because they've chosen to follow me over here, I have this offer. I need, X amount of clients in order to cover my take home. Okay, well, I need to market, X, Y, Z to do that. I knew that, and everything was very intentional, which meant that within 3 months, I had replaced that monthly income. Okay, so what I did is the first 3 months is I almost let it build and not take home money, so that then as soon as my corporate salary stopped, I was able to pay myself, and that was within the 3 months. So that was it. I was able to use my time really strategically to make back that money. I then continued. So this is where it just gets a bit manic. So that is March. So in March, I'm now no longer working I'm no longer employed. I'm now paying myself £1,300 from my business. I've got consistent, now I am signing more clients consistently. So then April, May, June happens. By June, I am fully booked one-to-one. And when I say fully booked, I literally just kept saying yes to clients. I did not work out my capacity. And I had 19 one-to-one clients. It was mental. Honest, it was mental. And now looking back, do not recommend. My now absolute capacity is 12. I currently have 7. And I want to try and cap it at 10. So yeah, don't recommend having 19 one-to-one clients at any time, especially when you're only working 2 days a week. So I was having calls most evenings. Most of my days were filled with client calls, and I was having to do everything else for my business, like content creation or marketing, everything like that, in between those calls. It was a time. But then in the July, August, obviously I was booked out. I decided, okay, no, closing for one-to-one clients. And I did Kelsey's launch her own way. And I decided to launch a group program. And that group program was called Bloom Your Wealth. And that group program was all around building personal wealth as a business owner. And it wasn't actually, at this point, I wasn't even just working with business owners. I was just working like with anyone. I think my niche was women. Anyway, and it was actually this program that made me niche down to business owners because, so this launch did super well. It made 15K. It was my first ever launch. It was summer. I launched it over July, August. Okay. It was summer. So when everyone tells you summer sales are slow, bullshit. I made £15,000 from that launch. But every single person was a business owner. And that is when I decided. So going into September, that's when I fully pivoted and niched into working with business owners. So that's pretty much it. That is building a full-time income on part-time hours. Because at that point in the September, I was obviously fully booked. I'd had this launched. I was running this group program. In September, I gained an extra day of childcare. I was now earning enough money that we could put him in another day and still be fine financially. And then again in the January, I then increased that as well. But by October, I was having consistent 5K months. I started paying myself 2K a month. So I was now matching my partner's income and he was full-time. So that is the journey, how in 10 months, I went from having no clients to being fully booked, having a 15K launch, putting my child in for an extra day of childcare and matching my partner's full-time salary while working 2 days a week. Technically, in quarter four, I had 3 days a week. It was a great time. Let me tell you that. And then it wasn't until 2025 that I had 4 days a week. But then actually we had the same amount of hours because my son was doing 8 till 6. But when we put him into 4 days a week, he only did 8 till 4 because he was just struggling with those hours. So I technically had the same amount of hours of childcare per week, but just over more days. But that wasn't until 2020. That was January 2025. Okay, so the whole of 2024, I had, for 3 quarters of 2024, I had 2 days a week where I was building my business. And then in Q4 2024, I had 3 days where I was building my business. And it wasn't until 2025 that I had 4 days. But even with those 4 days, and I've been doing that for over a year, we're now 18 months, I have 24 hours a week. I work 24 hours a week. That is a part-time job. And I take home a full-time income. Now, the most of 2025, I actually took home more than my partner. And he's doing a traditional 9 to 5. So that's more than a 9 to 5 job, part-time hours, because of business and because of coming up business. And this is why I preach so much about you need your financial foundation sorted. Because I had such strong financial foundations and I knew how I was building my business based on the finances, I was able to grow so fast. I was able to get stability so fast, okay? Because I understood how the money was moving in my business, I was able to make intentional decisions with my finances. I knew at any one time what I could afford, and I still do, what I can afford to pay myself, what I can invest in, what I can put towards my pension, what I can put to savings. I know all of that at any one time in my business. Obviously, working out the capacity thing, we've now done that. And so I'm able to know what my take-home pay is, which means I'm able to reverse engineer what my revenue needs to be. And so then I can reverse engineer, using my capacity and my time, how many clients I need, and then therefore what my pricing needs to be. And so all of it is very intentional. I can then also bring in other bits of data in my business. So things like conversion rates, audience growth, and I can use that information to start to almost project, to forecast as to what my income is going to look like. And that enables me to have this consistent income. This allows me to have a reliable take-home pay. And now, as I talked about in last week's episode, consistent income, there's still this thing around consistent income where it's you don't necessarily have to have £5,000 every single month for it to feel consistent. It will vary. That is the nature of business. But you can get it to vary within a smaller range than you might think. And also you can make sure that your take-home pay is the same every single month. even if your business revenue is inconsistent. And that allows you to be more on top of things, but also to manage your personal finances more reliably because you know what's coming in. And so you can just manage it as if you've got a 9-to-5 job. And your business becomes more predictable because if you know what your expenses are already going to be, including your take-home pay, well, then you know what revenue you need to bring in. And so you can reverse engineer using your capacity and your pricing and all of these things to make that happen. So this is what we do in Momentum. Everything that I've just walked you through, this is what we do in Momentum, okay? I want you taking home full-time income on part-time hours. That is what I want for you. Now, if you have full-time hours as well, happy days. Maybe you just take a day off. I don't work Fridays. Now, at the moment, it's because I've got my son, but he starts school in September. I'm still not going to work Fridays. That is going to be my me day. That is going to be my catching up on house admin. I'm still going to work 24 hours a week, okay? But I know that I'm going to also have consistent income because I have this data, I have this visibility over my finances so I can make really intentional decisions. And intentionality isn't just about what we're spending, it's also about what we're bringing in, okay? There's so many business owners out there that feel like they have no control over their income, and it's just not true. You do have control over your income. You're just not looking at the right things. You're relying on marketing better, marketing more, joining, visibility sprints, trial reels. If I get my face out there more. I had 25,000 followers and I was making under 3K a month. Yeah? I had a membership. I had one-to-one clients. Having followers does not equal money. Having this volume does not equal money unless you know how to monetize it. And you need to learn to monetize on a smaller audience. This is why I'm always talking about you build your financial foundations first, and then growth becomes the easy bit. Growth is just a numbers game. And I know you hate numbers. I hate numbers too. I cannot do mental maths. That's why spreadsheets exist. And you're like, oh, no, I have spreadsheets. And I'm like, girl, it's because all the spreadsheets you've downloaded have been super hella overcomplicated. I only do simple. Every time I build something, it's because I have a question in my head. The other day I built a capacity calendar thing because I was like, I actually don't know what my capacity is. And now that I'm taking on one-to-one clients again, I need to make sure that I don't go past that capacity. So I just built myself a capacity calculator. It's literally about having, what's the question in my head and how do I answer it? And how do I build something that answers it? Now, that is something I really enjoy doing, which means you don't have to because you can just come in my world and use my tools. And I know, for one, my cash flow, people that are listening to this, and you have my cash flow tracker, I'm good at what I do. So anyway, this is my invitation for you to come and join me inside Momentum. We're going to get you that consistent income. We're going to take you from those inconsistent 2 to 3K months up to consistent 5K plus months, okay? Whether it's your personal finances you want to focus more on or it's your business, we can do both. You want to talk more about business? Let's do it. You want to talk more about personal finances? A lot of my clients come to me, and what we do in the first month or so is work out their personal finances, their business finances, basically the financial foundation. It's what I do with everyone. There's no point me helping you with your business if there's no plan for what happens when the money lands, okay? So we need to do that first. And then we look at how does the business generate that income? How does the business pay ourselves reliably? And that is when we then look at the business model. We look at your offers, your capacity, your pricing. We look at your marketing, your sales cycles and your sales systems. We look at it all, okay? So I currently, like I said, I now have 7 one-to-one clients and I wanted to take 10. So I now only have 3 spots available. So if you want to work with me one-to-one, please make an application today and I would love to chat with you and to help you make that decision. I'm not going to push you either way. I'm here to just help you make intentional decisions. As you know, your girl can sell. I know I'm going to get my consistent income, so I don't need to pressure you into anything. Anyway, it has been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found this useful. And you know the rules. If you have something you want me to talk about, you want to request anything, just let me know. Slide into my DMs, pop me a message, and I will see you next week. Bye.